Gonna move forward to this image, which we use a lot in our trainings within the Employment Services Department. If you ask any of the staff within Employment Services, we can probably tell you this image by memory because we really value that this career planning process is a cycle. We, there's life, there's unexpected things, there's all sorts of different changes that will occur. And so, even looking back at the roadmap that I shared with you in the beginning, please know that there's not always a linear journey of start to finish. And this process is cyclical. And so, we can start with our assessment or our discovery spot. We can end up getting employed somewhere. And maybe it's not what we thought it was, or maybe our skills don't align the way we thought it would. And we're going to go back and reflect. We're going to go back and evaluate that job placement and see if we can transfer our skills elsewhere. Also, we've supported people through retention services for 5, 10, 20. When I first started in 2015, I was supporting someone in retention who had been employed for 30 years because he enjoyed his job. He liked what he was doing. He didn't want to change his job. But he did like having the comfort of a retention specialist to come in and to check on him, to see how things were going. At his business, the managers were changing quite frequently. And sometimes they would come in and they would change up his process a little bit, and that would be stressful for him. And so, for him, being able to reach out to his support staff when those times of stress came up, was really helpful. It was that safety net that he needed and allowed him to continue working and advocate with his employers, and adjust to all the change that was occurring while the main thing in his life, his employment, hadn't changed for so long. So again, we can provide retention services for as long as that job is there, or as long as you would like us to be providing support. So please remember, this process is very much a cycle. There's no clean cut entryway and exit way. We all come in at different parts of the process, but we will work with you through each step, and bearing in mind our main goal of independence. To recap, and again, I know it's an overview, so I'm anticipating your questions, and I can't wait to talk this through with you more further. I can't encourage you enough. Please research your programs and look at what is out there. What programs are out there? What's the wait list look like? Does it align with your goals and what you're needing and what you're looking for? Being really honest about what you're looking for and where you're at. For instance, in our pre-employment training program, our main goal is to support someone to obtain employment. So if someone seeks the program who is not fully on board with obtaining a job and that's not their goal, then pre-employment trainings might not be the right program. And there's even more. There's many other options too, of other programs. But I say that as a reminder, just being very honest and open about what your goals are, what your skill set is, what kind of program you're looking for, finding that right program for you, and you being able to make that choice. You'll complete your intake meeting and proceed with the process wherever you land. We're going to embrace supports to analyze our skill set. So knowing that support staff, no matter the part of the process, what we want to do, what we aim to do is to help someone to be as independent as possible. So that being said, we'll be very honest about where our skill set lies, what kind of skills we need to brush up and improve upon before we could be hired, any concerns that we might see, or areas that we need to work on before we're ready to move forward with employment. We'll outline our goals and develop our transferable skills. We want to ensure that we're not only preparing you for one job at one business, but that you've got a skill set and a toolbox of skills that you can transfer into another business. We'll also help through that interview process and building resumes. And thirdly, we'll utilize job coaching and natural supports to maintain independence, exploring advancement and promotion opportunities while keeping in mind that this is a process, and the process and the cycle keeps going. So again, don't be discouraged if you've tried out a program and maybe you didn't see success. Maybe we were terminated from that job opportunity. We're going to continue the cycle. We're going to build up those skills again, analyze and assess where we're at, and figure out what we need to do next. So stay encouraged that that process is a cycle and continues on and is very relevant for where we're currently at. I hope that was a good summary and helps us kind of get in a good spot where we can open up Q&A.
Thank you, Taylor. Yes, it's so great. Lots of great information. We do have some questions. I want to touch on something really quickly because you just mentioned it. You've kind of mentioned this throughout. You've said throughout um, being honest with kind of yourself, with whoever might be doing the assessment or the D&E or whatever it might be. And as part of the Family Supports Department, we get a lot of people coming in asking about employment. It's generally their caregiver, their guardian, their parent, grandparent, maybe an adult sibling supporting a participant, something like that. That caregiver really wants that person to get a job. I
Mhm.
mean, my goodness, do they ever?
Mhm.
But maybe their loved one, their son or daughter or sister or her grandchild or whoever, maybe they don't really want to get a job.
Right.
And so I would love for you maybe, since I think most of the people on the workshop tonight are caregivers. I think we do have some participants, some people who would be seeking the support directly. But I would
Mhm.
love for you just to talk a little bit more about how you would encourage the caregivers, the parents, the grandparents, and whoever on how to have those conversations with their loved one
Mhm.
before they kind of go through all this. Not that they shouldn't, not that we shouldn't
Right.
refer and all that. Just touch on it if you could.
I appreciate that because that does happen, and we see that again, as I mentioned, the example with pre-employment. If a person seeks pre-employment or any part of the process, and they say, "Oh, I don't really want to work," mom or dad's making me, or I have no choice. Support staff can only do so much. And so we have to empower the person that we're supporting to advocate for themselves, and we support that advocacy. And we cannot, we're in this field to help others. So we've got to go back to if someone is telling me that they do not want to work, I will advocate on their behalf that that's not their goal right now, that that's not where they want to be. And so that's why it's so important for us to be honest, because I can't carry someone through the program as much as I'd love to help everybody get a job. If we don't have the buy-in and if we don't have the want for the job, just like you or I, Sandy, like we've got to want to be here, we've got to want to do our jobs. And so it's the very same thing. Now, how I would encourage guardians or caregivers to loved ones to support through this. You've probably done workshops on this in the past, but Life Course Tools has so many beneficial tools that loved ones can sit down with, their son or daughter, their young adult, and talk through those goals and what their vision for a good life is, things that they want in their life, things that they don't want. That's what we do as staff. So if you are kind of at that spot with your loved one and you want to try that as well, please do. It opens up the door for a lot of really good conversations and honesty about, I don't really want to have a job, or I do want to have a job, but not now, or, whatever those harsh realities are. Now, we also, though, in employment services, we also um, gosh, I'm missing my words, but we also want to encourage young adults to work for motivation. For instance, we know that sometimes motivation isn't there. If we're right out of high school, or say we're 35 and we haven't been working for the past 10 years, whatever the situation is,
Right.
motivation can be really hard to build. So we will try our hardest to develop those skills. But again, we've got to have some sort of want and buy-in. So through those life course tools, I think you and your loved one can have those really good conversations about, I know you don't really want to work, or I know having a job doesn't sound that fun, but your goal is to live on your own one day. Your goal is to buy your own car, or your goal is to get your license, or your goal is whatever that might be.
Right.
Again, looking holistically, employment's a big piece to whatever that puzzle is. So I think we can use that to educate, to help open minds, to really paint the picture that, well, we need employment to reach those goals. And so that helps with that conversation.
I love that. I think you do employment does what a lot of our other staff do, and you kind of pause at the job and you take a few steps back and you say, okay, let's figure out the why. Why don't you maybe want a job? And let's think about what does a job get you? So yeah, if your goal is an apartment, if your goal is having money to buy all the things you want, is if your goal is whatever, oh, well,
Mhm.
guess what? A job can help you do those things.
Mhm.
So you have to find, right, that motivator and that incentive. And I
Mhm.
think that that's something that your staff, the employment staff is probably really, really, really creative and talented at doing, right? Just going backwards a little bit, a few steps back before, okay, it's time for pre-employment or it's time for whatever else the employment steps might be. We do have some questions, so I want to get to those.
Okay.
But I was just really jazzed about that one because
Yeah.
you're kind of touching on that so much. And it happens all the time with family
Mhm.
support interactions.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one, and we actually just talked about this earlier in a staff meeting. So one of our caregivers is asking, they're saying that their son has a great work ethic, some great employment and income goals, but they struggle with some of those social skills, right, in the workplace, what's appropriate, what's not. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about what employment might do for that, or what maybe other departments in the ARC we could maybe pull
Yeah.
in or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, so starting with employment services, that is something near and dear to my heart. We have Skills to Pay the Bills, which is our social skills classes. Skills to Pay the Bills is a national curriculum developed by ODEP. In about 2017, 2018, we took that curriculum and we tailored it into monthly classes. Now in 2025, we have weekly classes on skills to pay the bills. And so with that, there's 6 different social skills components, and we tailor specific classes to build upon those work skills. What we have found is we can have the best hard skills. We can learn, a lot of those technical skills of a job, but what really helps us maintain employment is social skills, being able to problem solve, think critically, work together as a team, have a positive attitude, and resolve conflicts. And so we have, again, tailored classes. There's anywhere from 4 to 5 classes per week. They're offered via Zoom mostly, but we do have periodic in-person classes as well. So right now there's a once a month in-person class. We're amongst peers who are also enrolled in employment services. So that's the one. Prerequisite to attend those classes is that we've got to be enrolled in employment services and one of the programs. But we do role playing. I mean, we cover every topic you could possibly think of, again, to help improve upon those skills that we know are so crucial to helping us maintain or obtain employment. Beyond employment services, we're going to also look at our recreational and our social life. Oftentimes, we're supporting people and they say, well, I really want to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Okay, well, work's not the place that we look for that. So we try to connect with other areas so we can have that social outlet, that recreational outlet. Sometimes some of those inappropriate behaviors or inappropriate things will come up at work because they're seeking that personal relationship at work. So we discuss boundaries. We discuss how, where's the appropriate place to find friends, to find a boyfriend or girlfriend, to play a sport. Maybe we're just wanting to have hobbies again and we're wanting to stay busy. There's so many different opportunities and options within the ARCS Leisure program. Within Next and Launch. I mean, so many different options that we just want to connect someone to so they're able to have that social outlet. And then we see those inappropriate work behaviors go down because we've got other outlets to have personal relationships and to have other things, and then we can focus more on work.
Another question, and I think they're asking about emailing one of the VR locations. So somebody asked, can they email that location right away off the bat, or do they have to go one of the other routes, like connecting with the St. Louis Arc first? I mean, I'm gonna say, hey, connect with us anyway, because we've got
Right.
so much to offer,
Right.
but they can just go to VR,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, you do not have to connect with an agency first. Like Sandy said, I think that that's best because you've got double support. Then you're able to talk with a navigator or talk with someone from employment services while you connect with Voc Rehab. But you can absolutely connect with Voc Rehab on your own from the beginning.
Right.
So there's no one way. There's
Right.
multiple routes.
Sure.
Mhm.
So, for our programs, and maybe, and any other programs that you know of, because something I love about the ARC is that we do not profess to do everything or be the best at everything. So we are always happy to say, hey, have you tried this other agency or something like that? So for this question, is this just for those after high school, which I know the answer to that, but I'll let you answer. So if my teen is still in high school, how do we build those skills? How do we start building those skills? What do we have to offer? Maybe what else?
Yes, absolutely. That's such an important question. So our programs, as discussed today, they are for people who are 18 and up. That being said, again, pre-employment is going to have a wait list. So if you know that your son or daughter might be going the route of pre-employment, it does not hurt to connect to Michelle Cancilla, the Assistant Director of Pre-Employment Services, to get your son or daughter on the wait list until they're 18 or until they've graduated high school and whatever that situation looks like. You can preemptively get on the wait list. So that way, come graduation, you don't have to wait a year. Now, a few different things here. If your son or daughter has the option to do VSP, which is Vocational Skills Program, it's offered through special school district. Most times we are going to encourage you to access that route. That is an extension of support where your son or daughter, they're graduated from high school, but they're able to grow their vocational skills, their work skills, their social skills. It's in a classroom setting, so kind of similar to that high school experience that they're used to. So if that's an option, I would ask your son or daughter's team at the next IEP, just kind of see what that route looks like. Again, we most often would encourage that route and then to look into employment services after because we have the rest of our lives to do employment services where VSP is only for eligible students from 18 until they're 21. And so because it's time limited, I would look into that. Now, another internal program that I would look into while we're in high school that we want to build up some skills, the leisure team has neighborhood experiences, and that is a great summer program. I believe it's 10 weeks long. Um,
Yeah, 8 or 10.
June to June to August. And so there's a lot of skill building that happens through that program, and it's a step towards employment. The biggest thing that I do want to share, especially for folks who are coming out of high school, is it is it's a new life after high school and post school services. And so a person in employment services is treated like an adult, is treated very much with responsibility as anyone else in the employment world. And so any foundational steps to get to that point to where we're ready for that responsibility, I would absolutely encourage. And those navigators on your team are awesome at helping connect to resources.
Yeah. So neighborhood experiences, they'll still be in high school. They're eligible for that. I think it's as young as 14 or 15, if I can't remember. What about SWEP or STEP or either one of those for teens? Like maybe not the older teen kiddos who are still staying in, doing that extended high school through SSD or something like that, but who are that true teen, maybe 15, 16, 17.
Yes, I'm glad that you brought that up. I didn't just for thinking that it might make it easier, but you mentioned a really important piece of the puzzle. SWEP is key. If you're able to participate in SWEP, which is the acronym for Summer Work Experience Program for St. Louis County. STEP is the same program in St. Charles County. It's Summer Teen Employment Program. Now, my reason for not bringing them up was just for simplicity. St. Louis ARC no longer provides those programs. That being said, as we've encouraged the whole time tonight, please look into other agencies that offer it. So that is definitely a good foundational skill builder. SWEP and STEP are for high school age students that are 16 to 20. And so that those formative years, and that can also be a good bridge from maybe we're not so motivated. Maybe we don't really know, that we want to have a job. Participating in SWEP or STEP, we're able to learn those skills, receive a paycheck. So we're also saying, hey, I've got my own money, I've got spending
Right.
money, and being able to have that ownership is how we can also develop more motivation. So, in the perfect world, and again, please know that there's many different ways in this journey, but starting in programs like neighborhood experiences, moving on to SWEP, which would be that next foundational builder in the employment world. It'll get you closer to where our goals are for employment. And then after SWEP, looking into those employment programs.
Wonderful. We are just about at time, but we've got 8 questions left, so
Okay.
we'll try to power through some of
Yes.
these. Somebody mentioned they like your image of embrace the journey, and I can see how this is a journey and not a quick sprint, they said. That being said, do you offer support to the parents while the child is on this journey? What a great question.
Great question. So that's where we lean so heavily on our family supports department. We will absolutely consult with a person's support network, as we call them, because it's a person's guardian, their caregiver, it could be their friends, whomever is supporting this person. We will consult with you, we will keep you updated. We will keep you along this journey and make sure that we've all got common goals. But workshops and things that would be more helpful, we always recommend that we look into family services and see what workshops are available, support groups, and all things like that, because we know that it can be just as tough on families and parents as well. It is such a journey, and so it's much longer than that roadmap shows. It takes a while, but yeah, we want you to have support along the way too.
I love that. That's great. Okay, so a voc rehab counselor and a job coach. What's the difference? Is there a difference?
Yes, absolutely. Those are two very separate things. So when thinking of voc rehab and voc rehab counselor, think of that as being our funding source, our funding partner. That counselor works within voc rehab and they're connecting you to resources, they're connecting you to programs in a similar way that, say, a case manager through DMH would. They're that connector, that navigator through the St. Louis Arc. They're connecting you to different services and programs through that funding stream. Job coach or employment specialist, that is a person who is hired or employed within that particular agency. That person is going to support on the job, whereas the voc rehab counselor, they're providing the funding for that job coach to do their job. The job coach will then provide the on-the-job support, their assessments, those tools that we've mentioned to analyze a person's readiness. They report back progress and data to the counselor. So we keep that counselor along that journey, but essentially that counselor is part of that funding source.
That's great. Um, a parent is asking, who should I contact about the self and discovery process?
Yeah, so the discovery and exploration process is
I
what
think
I'm
that's what they meant.
getting.
Yeah.
Okay. So to get started with discovery and exploration, we do have to go through VR. So that's kind of where there's that two-way street. You can connect to Tom and let him know that you're connecting to VR, but it's not necessary. You connect with VR, Voc Rehab, and you seek out discovery and exploration. They will share with you again the providing agencies. You pick your agency, and then if you choose us, you're connected with us, and we guide you through the rest of the steps. So if you know you're wanting to start at that point, you go right to VR. And a lot of times, again, that funding source, that counselor, they will guide you where you need to be. So if the outcome is that we're not quite ready for employment, they will recommend pre-employment. And then you know to call agencies that provide pre-employment, and you look into them from there.
That's great. Okay, there's one that I want to save for the end because it's kind of a fun question, so I'm going to skip it right now. How have you been able to help individuals with the transportation barrier, housing near the job, accessible to metro lines? My goodness, we get this question all the time in family support. This is a big one.
Absolutely. So, excuse me, very much in any part of our programs, we start with that assessment phase, that discovery. Again, the terminology might vary depending on the program, but our initial phase of every program is we're looking into those details. What's the radius of which you're able to commute to work, whether we're able to walk, ride a bike, get dropped off by a reliable transportation option, or if we don't have any of those options and we need to look into the bus or call a ride or via, although limited, we're going to look into different offerings depending on where you're located, but then also depending on where you're getting to. So, as I mentioned before, the person that we support drives this car. You're driving the journey, we're in the passenger seat. So, when we start out that first phase and we're looking into job interest and potential opportunities, you're able to tell us, I, as of right now, I don't have transportation options, so I will need to look for something that's near a bus route or near maybe Uber is something you are wanting to do, or maybe whatever your option is. We're able to guide you through what those potential options are, but then you're ultimately deciding the radius of which you're able to travel, and then we're able to connect you to the Metro Travel Training Program or to get connected with Call a Ride or whatever that might look like. There's also a stipend through the Productive Living Board, a transportation stipend. That's a whole other conversation. But
Right.
that's where you share with us what your needs are, what your situation is. We're able to connect you. We should be the connector along with family supports, but our main goal is to connect you to where you need to be. So just varies on depending on the person's situation. But you let us know your needs, and we're able to provide you some resources.
That's great. Somebody is asking, they say they don't have a job coach or anything, but they could really use some help with finding a job and resume building and things like that. Is that possible without the need of a job coach? And I will say I worked for the library, the St. Louis County Libraries, for almost 10 years. And, there are other, agencies and supports out there in the community. I know that they do things like helping people do resumes and stuff like that. But is that something that we here at the ARC could do? Maybe my
So
team, I don't know.
right. It could be, and some of the things that the Launch and Next group does, I know that they
Mhm.
work on resume building.
True.
What I would share though, because there's oftentimes that we'll have people who say, I don't want someone following me around. I don't want to stick out like a sore thumb. I don't really want any help. Please know that every process is different. And so if that resonates with you, that you know you need a little help obtaining a job and maybe some ongoing support, but you don't want someone to follow you like a shadow and you don't want to stick out like a sore thumb, we're able though to work through that. We want to promote your independence. And so if you're only needing some support here and there, our goal is to support you in those areas and to fade out the best that we can. And so just to kind of alleviate that concern, if that's, I would say embrace the help as we all kind of need that reminder. We all need help to get to where we want to be and to reach our goals. So I would encourage you to embrace that help, but then to advocate for yourself that, hey, I want help in these certain areas, but I don't want a ton of support. And again, just because I've mentioned coaching support starts at 100% and is ongoing, it doesn't mean that it's like that way with everyone, and it doesn't mean that it's like that way forever. So there's plenty of times that we're able to support people in a much lesser way, and we're able to fade out quicker, and we're able to, be as inconspicuous as possible and not make anybody feel like they stand out.
I love that. I love embrace the help. Oh my gosh, it is a great, great reminder. You've
Mhm.
kind of answered this throughout the presentation. How long is the program? How many days, weeks? How many hours a day or a week? Thanks. Again, I think you've mentioned it's very tailored and
Mhm.
individualized to that person's needs. So, but
Yeah.
still something maybe, you could share a little bit more about.
Yeah, so I think it's a good thing to know that it's not an everyday. Unless someone is receiving coaching services and they are working every single day. But our programs leading up to employment, it's typically 2 days a week, maybe less. Certain parts of that VR process, meaning discovery and exploration or development, that's going to be a little less frequent. Pre-employment is 2 days per week. Could possibly be, 2 days plus a skills class, or, so you're getting a few more things throughout that week. It is not an everyday. There is a difference in the support that we have through school and going to school every day for X amount of hours to then it's now 2 days per week, equaling about 8 to 10 hours roughly. So that's a difference we've got to prepare for. And then of course, once we move into coaching, it's all contingent upon what those working hours are. So if we're working part-time and it's 20 hours per week, varying hours, that's great, but it's all based on whatever that job looks like. If it's full time, again, we've got that support throughout that process, but just kind of contingent upon that job.
That's great. Two more questions.
Okay.
All right. A family lives in Eureka. There's zip code St. Louis County. We see this a lot, but they're located on that border, Jefferson County. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but how do we handle that working with individuals that are kind of on the border of our service providing areas?
Yeah, that's something where you can reach out to us and we can confirm your eligibility through reaching us and working with us. We have funding throughout St. Louis County, St. Louis City, some in St. Charles County, and we've had some throughout Jefferson or some in Jefferson County. So it's kind of one of those things where to be completely clear and confirm it, reach out to us just so we can make sure that you're in our eligible area and that we are able to provide services. That just makes it the easiest.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say that for any of our programs and services, because throughout the agency, kind of all
Mhm.
different programs might have different eligibility
Right,
requirements. So,
right.
all right, here's our last question, and I just love this one. My daughter has pretty wild ideas about her future. What is the wildest out of norm job you have gotten someone or an example of thinking outside the box? And I will say, I heard a story, I think from Brian, who's the director, that he had a participant come and say they wanted to get a job being a race car driver. I have no idea how they handled that. I think they did get this young person a job, not as a race car driver, but something else. So this
Right.
reminds me of that story. So
So to expand upon that, Sandy, we see that a lot where a person will say, I supported someone personally, and his dream goal was to play in the NBA. But we realized, and we had to be honest, our relevant skill set, it was not leading us to that. But what I found was he loved sports. Him and his dad would go to football games and they would stay up and travel, and then he'd come into training the next day and be kind of exhausted because of it. I mean, he loved sports. So what we did is we tailored that back a little bit and we figured out what kind of jobs are around sports. And so he worked as a rec or within a rec facility as a gym attendant. So he was able to clean up and maintain the facilities, but then part of that was sports. And so after school programs, setting up the pickleball nets or courts, setting up the volleyball nets, getting the basketballs out. He even was able to like carry around a whistle, and things that he liked about sports ended up that he had a well-rounded job within a rec facility that kept him connected to sports. And yet it wasn't that NBA position that is our dream goal, but it still aligned with that. We were still able to, meet some of those needs. So most often we see that where our dreams might be really, really, really big, and it might be longer on our journey that we could get closer to that. So we're going to take it a few steps back and see what's relevant for us now and how we can grow and build. Back to that question though, that's a challenge. We again, we create or seek out opportunities based on the person's interest level. So, gosh, I can't think of it even creative wise. I mean, working with dogs, we hear, I want to work with dogs and animals. Dogtopia is one of our um, best and most valued business relationship. They are wonderful. If you're familiar with the Dogtopia Foundation, they're great. And so a lot of people who have the dream of working with animals, that has been a way that we've connected. We have people working in bakeries and in kitchens where they're cooking and it's helping their culinary efforts. They've got dreams and aspirations to further that. We have Gosh, we have people working in law firms. We have
Yep.
people. Oh, this is where you need Tom. Tom would be able to
I know. Yeah.
five different. I mean,
Tom mentioned the law firm, the
yeah,
law library, somebody working in a law
yeah.
library, for
But
several
I mean,
years
you
now.
name it, as long as it is realistic and relevant to our skill set,
Right.
and a valid opportunity, we're going to seek it out. So, there's also people, though, that we have to have the conversation that maybe it's more of a hobby of yours and maybe it's not leading us to relevant employment. So, we walk that fine line of wanting to embrace and follow dreams so long as it's relevant for where we're at and would lead us to an employment
Mhm.
opportunity. But if not, we want to encourage the use of hobbies and furthering that. And,
Mhm.
we've had people who have a degree. We supported someone who had a degree in digital like animation. And so we set up at an internship where we're able to utilize and grow those skills, so really it's based on the person's interest and whatever opportunities we can connect to it.
I love that. Again, Taylor, thank you so much for being here with us tonight and all this wonderful information. And I want to tell everybody to have such a wonderful evening. Thanks again.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it so much, and I hope you all have a good evening.